All right, good morning, folks, and welcome to another episode of PWGC's Environmental Echo, our monthly podcast. I'm your host, Paul Boyce, CEO and President of PWGC, and today we've got a great guest, a repeat offender, I might add, from a few years ago, and I'm absolutely appreciative that he's come back to talk to us about some more interesting topics. We've got Jeff Szabo from the Suffolk County Water Authority. But before I get into more of a formal introduction, I just want to remind our listeners, and if you're fortunate enough to watch it on the internet, viewers, how to get a hold of us. Best way to do so is through our website, which is www.pwgrocer.com/podcast. If you guys have any ideas, comments, thoughts, suggestions, topics you want to discuss, feel free to reach out to us, and our marketing group is usually very responsive, and we'll get right back to you and take into consideration what you have pretty seriously. But anyhow, back to what we're talking about today with the Suffolk County Water Authority. We've had Jeff on a few years ago, but we're going to sort of have part two of the conversation. He is, as I mentioned, the CEO of the Suffolk County Water Authority, which is one of, if not the largest provider of public drinking water on Long Island, which you guys are serving, I think, over 1.2 million residents in Suffolk County.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. Jeff, he has served in his current position since 2010. He's going to give us an update on the Water Authority's efforts to improve its infrastructure, protect water quality, and improve the environment. Achievements during his tenure include, some pretty good stuff, which is the development of the long-term sustainable water supply plans for vulnerable areas, development of new treatment methods for emerging contaminants, and conducting vulnerability assessments for critical facilities, of which there are many. Jeff was founder and past chairman of the Long Island Commission of the Aquifer Protection Plan, LICAP. He serves on the National Drinking Water Advisory Council, is on the board of directors of the Association of the Metropolitan Water Agencies, which is the AMWA, and is chairman of its legislative committee. Jeff, let's jump right in and just say welcome. I'm so glad to have you back. We are huge fans of the Water Authority as we live here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the invite to come back, and certainly we have a very interesting and compelling story to tell, so I'm looking forward to our discussion.
All right. Well, one of the key topics we discussed back in, I believe it was 2002, it was a few years ago at this point, was emerging contaminants. And these things they've come a little ways, maybe a long ways in the last 3 years. But these included stuff like the PFAS and the 1,4-dioxane. Can you give us an update on the Water Authority's treatment efforts for these contaminants?
Great question. We're always happy to talk about emerging contaminants, and that's a term that's been used for many years now for PFAS, PFOA, 1,4-dioxane. It's no longer really emerging. They've emerged. They've emerged. They're here. They're regulated. Fortunately, with PFAS, New York State took some significant action several years ago to set a standard of 10 parts per trillion.
Yes.
Drinking water standard, which was something that the Water Authority complied with, and we met that challenge and deployed treatment, granular activated carbon to remove PFAS from drinking water. And that's a great thing. And the folks who listen to the podcast and residents of Suffolk County should feel assured that it's not in their drinking water. But there's some significant issues happening at the federal level, because a couple of years ago, the federal government put forward a maximum contaminant rule for PFAS of 4 parts. 4 parts. New York State is 10 parts. The federal level is 4 parts. And with the change of administration from the Biden administration to the Trump administration, they reviewed those regulations before they went into effect. And there was some concern that they may be changed, they may be lowered, they may be removed completely, and we got word just a couple of months ago that the EPA was sticking with the 4 parts, which is a great thing for public health, because there are significant concerns related to the health effects of PFAS, not only drinking water but just overall. But the EPA did sort of roll back and is taking a second look at some of the other compounds within that PFAS family. So there's a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, what's happening nationally that would impact drinking water when it comes to PFAS. The good thing, though, and I want to sort of make sure that this message is loud and clear, at the Water Authority, we decided a while ago that we're treating to 4 parts. So whether the state regulation is 10 parts, the federal is 4 parts, our goal is to bring everything to non-detect. and we comply with the regulation. That new the 4 parts from at the federal level doesn't go into effect until 2031. However, we comply today. So we comply today. We're proud of our past track record of sort of leading the industry, beating at the forefront of treatment. And the folks of Suffolk County should feel rest assured that we comply with that federal regulation 6 years early.
Wow. What about the 1,4-dioxane? I mean, it's probably just as prevalent as the PFAS in some instances. What are you guys doing about that?
Great question. So PFAS nationally is certainly much more prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's getting certainly a lot of attention. It may be the biggest single sort of a challenge that the industry has across the country and across the globe, detecting, removing PFAS from drinking water. Dioxane is a little different. We have certainly elevated levels here in Suffolk County, Long Island overall. The federal government, the EPA, has not set a regulation for dioxane, but the state has. So the state has set a standard of 1 part per billion, which we comply with, and we have rolled out 17 different advanced oxidation process systems to remove dioxane. We have another 17 that we're rolling out over the next couple of years. We expect a total of anywhere between 30 and 40 AOP systems to remove dioxane.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is all good. Again, we're ahead of the curve. I doubt that the federal government will set a standard for dioxane. The state has been, New York State and several other states have been very aggressive when they look at drinking water quality and setting low standards, because it's such so prevalent here on the island. Primarily across the nation, you don't see dioxane hitting like it does here in Suffolk County. So they may not set a standard, but again, we're meeting the deadline. We're ahead of the curve, and we've got treatment that we rolled out.
Well, that's, you said 30 or 40 of those systems. They're not exactly simple systems. At PWGC, we've been involved, not with you guys, but with some other water suppliers in designing and getting these things constructed. They're also not inexpensive, right? So 30 or 40 of them, I hope our listeners can appreciate this. That's often 10 times the size of a lot of other water districts that are doing them. So, wow. 100%.
So it's a little bit more complicated. Removing dioxane is a little bit more complicated than removing PFAS. PFAS is typically removed by granular activated carbon that many drinking water suppliers, including the Water Authority, it's sort of standard treatment, right? Carbon is standard. It's very good at removing substances, and it's effective. It's still, there's a cost associated with putting carbon in, of course, but when you have a compound like dioxane that you're removing, carbon doesn't really work well. It burns through it very, very quickly. It's not really cost effective. So we, several years ago, developed, working with New York State and consultants, an advanced oxidation process that the state had never heard of, that the state was unaware of it, the state health department. And we knew that we wanted to be out front. We needed to work with really smart people from the outside, not just using our own engineering team, but deal with folks who were creative, who were at the forefront of the industry, and we worked together to get this advanced oxidation process approved by the New York State Health Department. It took several years, but it's now widely used by many suppliers across the island and other parts of the state. Complicating factor on top of that is AOP is then run through carbon. Exactly. So carbon is a big, granular activated carbon is a big part of what we do. Yep. And certainly when there's just dioxane detected, you then typically need to have carbon at the same site, at the same well, to remove these compounds.
Absolutely fascinating, and never ceases to amaze. But while we're still on this topic of, we said emerging, those guys have emerged, right? PFAS, 1,4-dioxane. Are there other compounds out there on your radar that truly are emerging?
Great question. Boy, you're really good at this,
Well, had a little practice.
So, yes, New York State has a Drinking Water Quality Council that was established back in 2017 or 2018. It's comprised of various individuals from across the state with different backgrounds, including engineers and water suppliers, toxicologists, representatives from the governor's office, and other individuals. And they meet quarterly, and they're looking at setting regulations for other compounds, primarily within that PFAS family. So everyone knows PFAS and PFOA, but there are other sub-compounds. There are literally thousands of compounds in the PFAS family that the state is looking to potentially regulate. The good thing is most of them, the long and short chain PFAS compounds, are removed by carbon. One, where we're keeping an eye on them to see if they're detected. We're already testing for 29 different compounds. Yeah. We test for almost over 500 different chemical compounds. We're required to test for about 200. So we continue to do that to see what's in the aquifer, and if it's there, what do we need to do to remove it?
All right. Good. Now, next question that's still with these emerging and emerged. We did talk a little bit about this. These things, they don't pay for themselves when we install these treatment systems. Money's going to come from somewhere. How do these efforts affect rates for consumers?
Very good question. It is costly. It's very expensive. Each of these, whether it's carbon or whether it's advanced oxidation, they cost millions of dollars to construct, to engineer, to construct, and then to operate. There's long-term operating costs with each of these types of treatments. So 4 years ago, we established a drinking water quality surcharge. It was a $20 quarterly charge for our customers. We couldn't wait. We couldn't wait to for the folks who manufactured the compounds to pay to put treatment in, right? That's our goal, right? The Water Authority and other drinking water supplies, we did not put these chemical compounds into the aquifer, but it's our job to remove them. So we have to remove them, and we're suing the manufacturers of these compounds on both fronts, on both the dioxin and the PFAS front. But until those matters are resolved, we needed the cash to actually construct the treatment. So we instituted this surcharge. We generated millions of dollars a year in order to rush treatment out. We've done that. It's been successful. And again, we're trying to determine what's next, right? What's next? What should we be looking for, and how much money
on the radar
moving forward?
So you touched on a little bit of my next follow-up questions is there legal action pending? Definitely is. It makes sense. Rate increases through surcharges. What about grants? Is there anything out there to help, that we can tap into as, part of here of Suffolk County and, alleviate some of the cost?
Right. I love it. So for many years, when I first started with the Water Authority back in 2010, there really wasn't a lot of funding available to offset direct, capital cost or treatment costs for our customers. And times have changed. So times have changed significantly, where we have secured over $40 million in various sources over the last 5 years to offset the cost for our customers. So we've been very aggressive. We have a team of individuals at the Water Authority who work and try to secure, whether it's local, state, or federal funding. There's been several different sort of avenues to pursue. Certainly the State Drinking Water Quality Fund. In fact, the state budget was just adopted again, and I believe there's $500 million again appropriated. That's usually that's been there. That's very consistent in the state budget since 2017, 2018. But every year, we need to advocate and lobby the legislature and the governor to make sure that funding is restored and it maintains its place in the adopted budget, which it did this year. So we will use that as a source to offset the cost for our customers. At the federal level, there's the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which did provide billions of dollars for drinking water projects and infrastructure projects. We were fortunate here in Suffolk County. We've got our county executive, Ed Romaine, who's been fantastic and a big advocate for the Water Authority in providing safe drinking water. He provided funding through ARPA funds, for several different water main extension projects. Supervisor Dan Panico from Brookhaven has also been a big advocate and a partner with allocating ARPA funds for extending water main to people who needed it. And then there's the congressional direct spending. So the last couple of years, this went away for a bit, but the last couple of years, they've restored congressional direct funding. So we get to put in requests for different water treatment projects, and they've been very good, whether it's through Senator Schumer or our different local Congress folks who have put money in, and we've secured funding through those sources too.
This is super helpful. I mean, I'm glad we're getting the word out and the message out, and I hope people are listening. You know, it's not always just on our backs, you know, so
exactly.
we need the help. Moving along, the demand for water is growing, obviously. You guys know that probably better than anyone. You keep seeing the amounts pumped each year going up and up and up. And can you tell us about your efforts to meet those demands? I mean, what are we doing?
So we build our system. We have to build our system for peak demand, and peak demand typically occurs during July, August, and September when folks have their irrigation systems running and they're programmed, and a lot of water goes to making sure that we have very green, lush property and all that stuff. We look good for the neighbors, but it's a tremendous drag on our system. You can see every summer when we have long periods of heat and lack of rain, where early in the morning when those automated irrigation system timers go off, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, where we're literally pumping everything we got to try to meet that demand. Our concern is making sure that we have enough water for emergency services, for hydrants, and for hospitals, and for critical care agencies that care for people. But we can't lose pressure within the system. So what we did a couple of years ago is we started very aggressively communicating with the public about sort of the value of water, being smart about water use. We provide the board, led by our chairman, Charlie Lefkowitz, has been very vocal in his support of providing funding in our budget to aggressively talk to the residents. We've done commercials, we've done social media, we do advertising in different publications, trying to let folks know that, hey, we're all stewards of the aquifer while we're here. Let's be smart how we use it. So we build for peak demand, and we've been very aggressive with communicating when there are issues. Those early morning hours in the summer, North Fork, the township of Southold, is my number one concern when I wake up. 5 a.m. and I'm looking at the system and I get the reports from my operations folks. Southold is continuously sort of an area. Are we making sure that we're meeting demand? Is pressure adequate?
Yeah, pressure, right.
What's happening at our elevated tanks, our elevated storage tanks? During the course of those early morning hours, they drain to just at times a couple of feet. So Southold is an issue. Other areas along Kings Park this summer we have an issue. Yeah. Previously, Southampton has been an issue. So we know habits don't change overnight. People's habits don't change overnight. So we need to continuously have the conversation with our customers about smart use and conserving water, and hopefully over time it'll have a deep impact.
Oh, man, you were getting ahead of me on some of my questions here, but these are all great answers. Are you guys, in addition to what you just said, are you guys looking at alternative sources or developing new sources like new wells? I mean, there's only so much we can get out of the ground, I suppose. It's just, we are on an island. It's not infinite. There's a lot of water down there. There's a lot of clean water. And we want to keep it that way. But, what can you guys do to,
Smart question again. I'm not necessarily concerned about running out of water. To your point, there certainly is enough water. We recharge more than we use each year, right? Mm-hmm. So the water that's used, that's pumped, which for us is 75 billion gallons a year. If you add on the other suppliers, more than that is taken back into the aquifer. So the supply is there, but we always look to do things better. And we always look to do things smarter. And some of the things, for many years, it was very easy for the Water Authority and other agencies to sort of just, drill another well. We've got the aquifers there, we've got property, we can, do this easily. It's costly, of course, but let's drill another well when we need supply. Conservation, along with sort of smart use and tying the system in a little better, building more elevated storage tanks so there's more water storage. That's been a priority of ours for probably the last 10 years or so, making sure that we have that supply to meet the peak demand. I think there are better ways to do it other than just drilling a well.
All right. And you touched on it, Southold, that North Fork, right? It's been in the news recently. You guys are looking to extend water main or mains, through the town of Riverhead to reach them.
Right.
How's that going?
So we appreciate the question. It's a topic I've talked about quite a bit lately. Southold, the North Fork of Long Island, we have about 12,000 customers. We don't serve the entire North Fork. We supply a portion of it, and we have about 60 wells on about 20 different well fields. Most of these wells produce a small amount of water when you compare it to other wells that we have in Western Suffolk. Western Suffolk wells are several hundred feet deep.
Yeah.
We can pump a lot of water out of the aquifer from there. In Southold, you're talking about wells that, for the most part, supply a couple of hundred gallons per minute.
Mm-hmm.
What we've tried to do is, and we've had conversations and we've worked with the different elected officials out there trying to message the folks and communicate better with them about water, right? The value of water and conservation. But they just don't have the water. The aquifer is different there than it is in other parts of the island. So the water just is not there. What we'd like to do is move water from where we have it, which is in Flanders, Southampton, move it 8.5 miles to through the township of Riverhead to the Southold Riverhead town line and tie into the system there. We could bring several thousand gallons a minute of additional water. It won't impact the aquifer in Flanders. There's an adequate supply there. It's some of the best water in our entire service territory.
Yeah, I agree.
And that would allow us, this is the best thing about it, that would allow us to meet existing demand in Southold and also take some of our existing wells eventually out of service. So we would take some of those small producing wells out of service and let the aquifer replenish and restore itself, again, over years. But that's something that we think is a real benefit to the folks in Southold. There are still some folks who, because of high levels of PFAS and other compounds, may look to eventually connect. That'll be decided at a later date. But I think by supplying the water from where we have it to where we need it, I think it's a big plus for Southold. Now, getting through Riverhead, that's going to be a challenge.
So, folks, that's all the time we have today with Jeff Szabo. We're going to be doing a part 2, so please, I hope you guys will tune in. But I do want to thank Jeff for joining us today. Again, the CEO of the Suffolk County Water Authority. I'm Paul Boyce, your host from PWGC. This is the Environmental Echo, and I appreciate everyone for joining in. But please stay tuned for part 2, coming up soon.